Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 116 of Discourse in Magic with the Toronto Magic Company. Now, this episode is super interesting because Tyler and I interview Ben Train and I because Ben and I co-founded the Toronto Magic Company. So we brought ourselves, or I brought myself on the podcast just because we're living in such an interesting time of live magic and producing live shows. There's so much going on, things happening in San Francisco and Chicago and in LA and in New York. There's people producing their own shows. There's so much live magic happening that we're living in a fantastic time. So here it is, episode 116, all about the Toronto Magic Company and how you too can bring something like this to your city and start producing shows. Here it is. 116 of Discourse in Magic with the Toronto Magic Company.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Discourse in Magic. Today, I'm doing the intro.
What?
Yeah, guess what? We're here
Wrong.
with a Discourse in Magic first. What episode number is this?
Yep.
Okay. 150.
No,
we don't know.
I don't know when this is coming.
Yeah, we don't know yet. Doesn't matter. It'll happen. But this is a Discourse in Magic first. We have two people that have been on the podcast multiple times. One has been on every episode. We are here with Jonah and Ben from the Toronto Magic Company. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Great.
I love that I'm pretending that this isn't my own podcast and that now I'm on this side. And already I'm nervous. Anything could come at me.
You know your podcast is going well when you are interviewing yourself.
You've made it when you've gotten as far as...
Who's your next guest? Just me. Just talking. I'm going to interview myself.
No, it's way worse than that. We already do that. This is instead us bringing ourselves on as a guest.
Yeah, this isn't even our monthly episode.
But we should talk about sort of why this is a cool thing, which is... there's a whole movement happening right now in the last 1 to 5 years of magic shows being in a big, huge wave, live magic shows. We heard about it with the Chicago Magic Lounge. We've heard about it with, all the stuff going on with the specific magicians, like people like Joshua J. and Derek Delgadio, and there's a lot of talk about those things. And a lot of people have said that we're in this like golden era of magic shows. So I just wanted to be able to document us talking about Toronto Magic Company and sort of where we are in this moment. I felt like this was a good snapshot moment.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. We know how both of you got into magic because you've both been on the podcast before, but how did you guys get into Toronto Magic Company? What was the original idea? How did it come to be?
Okay, well, it started over a decade ago. I mean, all these things were standing on the shoulders of giants. So our company and our shows are based on shows that happened in Toronto and around Toronto for many years, including even starting before we were in Magic. But there was a gentleman named James Allen who ran a weekly show, which he had inherited from other magicians who had inherited and so forth and so on. But he ran a weekly show, and whenever magicians wanted to go on stage and develop a new act or wanted to get some experience performing, he would give them the opportunity to open on the show. And I had the opportunity to open for him a few times. I got to start developing magic. And eventually he changed the format of the show. He got rid of having openers and he just started doing his own show because he had enough material and he had fans that wanted to come to see the James Allen show. And for a while there was nowhere to do magic in Toronto if you were just starting out. So about a year and a half ago, I started the newest trick in the book. It was supposed to be a 2-month run only, and it was a weekly magic show, a weekly open mic magic show. So we had 5 different magicians on the lineup. Each one of them did about 10 minutes of brand new material, stuff they had never tried in front of a live audience before. And it was an opportunity for them to workshop and develop things. And again, it was only supposed to be a 2-month thing, but it was so popular and it was so successful that we kept it going. And about that time, Jonah had helped me with the initial idea. Jonah was involved with performing on the lineup a few times. And we started talking about other shows that we wanted to introduce. So I had wanted to do a magic variety show similar to what James Allen had done. So we would have an open mic magic show, and then where new people could develop stuff. And then we would have a paid magic show where more experienced performers could share things that they had already honed. And so I knew I wanted to do that. I knew I wanted to bring in international performers to do some bigger shows. So Jonah was there helping me develop the idea. I think it was probably he who suggested is like, we should just put this under one big company and call it like the Toronto Magic Company rather than having all these different shows. And I said, that sounds like a good idea. I wasn't sure how to go about running a company on my own. I figured Jonah was young and exploitable, so I tricked him into working with me, and then we started the Toronto Magic Company, and we're doing all the stuff I wanted to do, plus even more cool stuff that I didn't think of when I first came up with the idea, and hopefully we'll have even more stuff coming up that we don't even know about yet.
Awesome. It's so cool to hear that it was specifically about the newest trick, that it was so successful that you just had to keep doing it. It must have been really encouraging for both of you as a company.
It played such a huge role that we had something actually going on that we were both invested in. And I mean, the reason for me was we just became much closer friends in that year and a bit because I had moved
acquaintances.
Home. Okay,
I would say we're
down.
acquaintances.
Is when I moved back here from Kingston. So we're spending a lot of time together, which means we were talking to each other about what we would do on that show and how that show might grow and how, all the different things that would happen to the newest trick. So, one of the big things, which is obviously as well how the podcast got its legs, is just sort of on friendship and on the projects that were going on. Settle down, you boys, and the projects that are going on at that time. So.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's very important. Like, we're passionate about what we're doing, but we've also reached out and connected with lots of other people in the community who are passionate about what we're doing or passionate about getting involved with it. And what's really cool is we now have some non-magician people who are just such fans of what we've been able to do that they want to help out with shows. They come out and support all of our events. They buy tickets. We've had people who are non-magicians who buy tickets to our events and then message us and say, hey, I bought a ticket, but if you want me to come early and help with setup or stuff, like, we'll do that.
Right.
And those, like, when you're working with people you like, when you're doing stuff that you're passionate and excited about, and you're working with people you like who are also passionate about that thing, it's exciting, it's fun, and that's what happened with Newest Trick. And
and they're just, the things we're talking about are obviously just small milestones, right? We're like, finally, a non-magician comes to a lot of our shows. Like,
right.
One fan.
It sounds
we're excited that we have one
fan. But
you guys are interviewing yourselves right now. So listen, we start small.
Yeah.
But listen, some people
Discourse
listen to
has been
it,
around
so.
longer than TMC, and we're interviewing ourselves.
Yeah.
So
When
you're far ahead of us.
When David Copperfield first started performing, he used to only have one person who would come out, and that person would move around the 1,000-seat theater just clapping from different spots. And it took 10 years before other people started coming to see his show.
What?
That's not real.
That's not true.
That's not even
That
real at
doesn't
all.
make sense.
Yeah. Why would he even move? Like, he came, like, he started row 1A, whatever.
Yeah, he would move
and
about.
then next for until...
Throughout the show.
So he did 100 shows a year for 10 years, and then he filled the 1,000 seats with the one person, and then he made it big.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're
anyways,
down a rabbit hole. Let me get this
I don't
interview
know why
back
you
on
guys focused on
track.
that.
You've come a long way since you first started out, and
baby.
you've learned a lot.
We have.
Starting your own company. So what's the one piece of advice you would give to yourself on the first day, the first Toronto Magic Company meeting? What would you scream in that room, like, no, you're making a mistake, or you should do this instead?
I think we both agree that we would tell ourselves to not work with each other. God, there's so much stuff. Production value matters. And even starting small, like when you first start small and you're like, we're going to do a show, I don't know if it's going to last 2 months or 3 months. It's hard to justify spending thousands of dollars on promotional videos and equipment and recording stuff. Because you're like, what if it lasts 2 months and now I have $3,000 of gear that's useless?
Right.
But the thing is, if you invest early in that production stuff, it means the quality of the shows you're putting on are better, which means you are substantially increasing the likelihood of your show's success. So, like, right away with our first show that we did, we invested more than $1,000. Now, depending on who you are, that might sound so inconsequential it's ridiculous, or that might sound like a huge sum. But we invested more than $1,000 just throwing a big party where we had caterers come to provide free food for people. We brought in videographers, photographers. We rented a place. We brought in 10 performers to perform on stage. You guys were there. You were on stage. All of us were on stage.
Yeah.
And we invested
I drank
that money.
a lot of vodka.
We had drinks. It was great. And we did that so that right out the gate from day one, we could launch with promo videos with great photos on websites and stuff like that, and a good buzz. We could get good reviews from people. But what we didn't invest in until much later was like good audio equipment, for instance, like speakers and good quality mics. We just now have started putting time into like the music and the audio intros that happen before shows. We just started finding venues that have the aesthetic look that we sort of want. We're still just now figuring out the graphics, and we're talking about, all these new things that we want to update and do. So,
well, at the time you had a time crunch, right? Which is why you didn't have the ability to pick the right venue necessarily.
I also say everything is always a time crunch.
Life is a time crunch.
The one thing for me from the beginning that I would say is systems, because, the one thing we're always struggling with is time, is doing things on time, doing it within enough time, getting things done in the right time, finding people to do it in the time frame we have. Like, time is always a problem. So I don't feel that like a certain time was more difficult than another time because of how much of a time crunch it is. All the times are all difficult.
Yeah, and it's you'd be surprised by how little time 4 months is, let's say, to plan an event.
Right, yeah,
Because remember, like, if your event's 4 months from now, you have to make sure you have all the graphics done. You have to have your lineup set. You have to have the promo material printed and disseminated. You have to have all the Eventbrites or whatever stuff up. And all that has to be done before you can even start advertising. So that might take a couple of weeks for performers to confirm, for stuff to get done. So suddenly your 4-month window is down to 3.5 months. Yeah. And the next thing you know, you have to start sending stuff out, and there's a slow buzz to spread information. So now you're down to like 2 months. And then you start doing a real,
And you have to take into account, obviously, that people don't buy tickets to things till the last week or a week and a half or 2 weeks, which means that you're just sitting on preparation, waiting for...
And depending on how...
I invested and I'm not getting the return until last minute. That must be stressful.
And depending on how busy you are, like, we are not just pushing one event every 4 months. We're pushing for a whole bunch of different things. And so during that small 4-month window, we've got to plan in other stuff and push for other events. So lots of things happen. So I will say this, because just on a tangent for 1 second, Jonah was talking about structure. And one of the best parts of our job also happens to be one of the most challenging. And that is that we are the owners of our own company. We are employed by ourselves. We are accountable to each other and ourselves only, which means that we can work in as fun an environment as we want.
Or as soft as we like.
So we'll do things like I am a fan of shooting hoops and going for walks and doing fun things while we're talking about creative ideas. But we also have to be conscious of when there's like numbers that need discussing, or there's
a laptop should be out on the table.
There's a
for
time
this
and a place for
conversation.
fun stuff. There's a time and a place for like real work mode, sitting down to do it. And when you start by yourself or with a company, know that you're only going to be accountable to yourself and to the people that you're working with, and you should enjoy it. But that if you do not have structure in place, if you don't have a schedule in place, if you don't have some sort of accountability sheets in place, it is so easy to get off track, and then the time is gone.
And because there's so many moving parts, like a show is only as good as it ends up being, right? Which it has to do with all of the factors, like how many people are there, how good the quality of the show itself is, the material before the show that tells people how they are to take in the experience. And, there's so many different things that translate into how the experience of the show is, and that's all on the shoulders of producing a show.
So if you don't have a checklist, if you are not diligent, you will forget stuff.
And it must be more challenging when you're working with a close friend, because now, the accountability is on you, but it affects multiple people and multiple people that you care about.
Yeah.
Right?
Everything is blurred. Work is play and play is work. And
yeah, by the way, because we're close friends and we now run this company together, the last year and a half, there has not been, as far as I can remember, a single time that we hung out where there wasn't at some point work discussed. No. So that's how passionate and excited. And I don't mean that as a negative. I don't mean like every time we talk and hang out now we have to talk about work. I mean, like, we're so excited about what we're doing and what that every time we see each other, it's like we want to talk and continue working.
And that's how the podcast is too, right?
Yeah.
And that's how that came to be as well, which was the same process. And it was just all we wanted to talk about was all the cool guests we were getting and all the people we were interviewing and all the cool feedback that was coming from the episodes. And, with all of the challenges and warnings that are being expressed right now with working with friends and how it's very complicated, it's also super rewarding because a friendship that was just based on being like, hey, like, how's your day? Like, how's this? You're now working together on projects and you're sharing in the joy of completion. Like, how fantastic that the Venn diagram of interest overlapped enough to start a project in that, in that little window and be able to share that interest. So it takes up a lot of time, but it also is an investment of time and hours and,
And we were, when Jonah and I partnered together on this, it was not a light decision. No. I had known Jonah for a while, and I knew the quality of his character. Like, we had talked about this. It wasn't like I reached out to somebody I didn't know and I was like, do you want to help me with this thing? He had been invaluable before we started putting the company together. So we would sit down and he would pitch ideas back and forth and he helped refine them. So I knew that he brought something to the table that would help the company, and I also knew who he was, and I wanted to work with him and be friends with him.
And it was about a year into starting Discourse in Magic, which I know played a role in
for sure.
thinking that I am a qualified member of Magic Society.
Well, no, what that showed me,
I mean that.
What it showed me is, like, I know how hard it is to produce content. I know there have been countless times that I've thought of projects I wanted to do or started projects that have not been completed because completing projects that require, like, the commitment that you put into a monthly or now weekly podcast is crazy. So yeah, after I saw that you did it for a year and the quality of what you were putting out and how you were growing,
and the fact that I was about to say we were doing it on our own, but the fact that Jonah was doing it completely on his own. Like, now we have a graphics guy and an editor and a this and a that, but like Jonah was doing 100% of that work. Like, I showed up for the interviews and then he booked more guests and he edited and he put out the newsletter and he did this and he did that.
Okay, let's enough about Jonah.
I'm really not that great.
Yeah,
if I'm someone who has this awesome idea, this awesome passion, and I'm sharing it with a friend the way me and Jonah shared our passion for magic theory and what is magic and asking these questions that we ask on our podcast, what would be both of your guys' advice on how to start that relationship in a productive and positive way?
Okay, well, I have never intentionally set out to have, like, a meaningful relationship with someone. You meet somebody and then you talk and you listen, right? It's a back and forth. And, I'll give an example. When I worked with Chris Mayhew, when we were very good friends before we started working on our series of Unfortunate Effects together, and we ended up having issues on the shoot because, of course, there's a lot of frustration. He was, we took very defined roles where I was like the producer, financier, and other stuff, and I was in charge of business decisions. He was in charge of more creative, and so we butt heads a lot. There was a lot of frustration. We saw it differently, and one day we had to sit down on a park bench. We called a meeting and we brought a list of grievances that we had put out. And not with an intention of saying, I'm mad at you for this, but like, this is an issue that our friendship is so meaningful that we have to work these out so that we can move past this. And then we did.
I love that.
And we ended up hugging it out and we're still very good friends.
Yeah.
So, understand that no matter how good a friend you work with, just like you've had fights with your mom, your dad, your siblings,
your loved
everybody
one,
you love, even your dog and cat or your animal, you've probably been frustrated with the time.
I screamed at my cat this morning. I was so mad.
Yeah. You have to have the maturity to work through these things like you would with any relationship.
Yeah.
There's the maturity of working with people who you know and who you can trust. There's the maturity of being able to resolve issues when they come up. But there's also the maturity that comes from, like, knowing when not to get certain people involved, when to do things on your own. You find lots of people who are excited about what you're doing and want to work with you, and you like them and you want to work with them, and get them involved. Just understand that,
Everyone
like, me and
has a
Jonah are partners in this, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else who works with us isn't our partner in this, but they are either remunerated in some way or they benefit in some way. Like, so they're involved, they benefit, we benefit, they get to be their passions, but, they don't necessarily aren't as involved as we are, right?
Right, yeah.
So you can find lots of people who are excited to help you that you only need to do one thing and you don't have to rely on them for 3 times a week to meet with,
Yeah. You can appreciate someone's passion without wanting to take it on for yourself necessarily.
Yeah, and there might be a lot of opportunities in your life to create projects with different people. And I've had projects I paired with a friend to go on tour to do something, and the whole thing didn't work out. Like, it just didn't work. So sometimes the stuff doesn't work out, but you do what you can to make it work out. And you also do what you can to make it so that day to day, everyone is getting positive, right? Like,
maybe it is worth working with someone who you can end on a positive note regardless versus someone who might be overly qualified. Like if you're going to butt heads with someone who's going to, they have 10 years experience in that field, but you're going to hate working with them, it might not be worth getting the result in the end.
Every project that you work on should end positively. Yeah. Even if it's a failure in many objective ways. Like
we've all bombed on stage.
Yeah, you can bomb, you can lose money, you can have poor attendance. There's lots of things that can happen. It should still end on a positive note because you benefit, you've learned valuable things from it. Hopefully you've worked together in such a way that you'll continue to work together in the future. You just recognize there were things that didn't work that need improving. The next show you do all the great things you did on the first one, plus more, right? You fix the mistakes, and then that show is better. So it's not that every event has to be successful, but every event has to end on a positive note. Every project should end. We've had events where we've lost hundreds and hundreds of dollars. We've never had an event.
Didn't even do the event.
Yeah, we've never had an event that we've lost more than thousands of dollars, but we've gotten close to losing $1,000. And I can tell you, there's nothing more frustrating than seeing like 100, I think we had 200 empty seats at this one event, and like it was just an absolute abject bomb. So many mistakes were made. That was very early on. We learned from it. We finished the year with a little bit of a net positive in money, which is great, but also we learned. So our future events will not have that mistake.
That's the value. Right?
We are going to make other mistakes.
Maybe you only made a few $100s in a full year, a few $1,000s in a full year, whatever it was. You didn't make that much money.
Wasn't a few thousand.
All right. Whatever.
It was $1.5 million, in case you kids want to get into magic. But we're rich now.
But you learn so much, and there's a lot of value in that. Like school just costs money. You know what I mean? That's all it does is cost money. But
so I'm not hating on school. I went to York University and Seneca College and U of T. Yeah. I graduated with a bunch of double honors and stuff. I know Jonah went to
Queens.
Not hating on school. I learned so much valuable stuff in there.
I dropped out because I'm fucking smart.
And there's no hate. I learned so much valuable stuff through school. But I won't lie. If instead of doing my 8 years of university, I only started performing after university, so I was in my 30s, or I guess 29 or something when I started performing.
Yeah, you're 29s.
So if I had spent those 8 years on stage, if I had started at 21 doing the stuff that I was doing at 29, I don't know where I'd be right now. It's kind of interesting.
Course.
So and I'm basically now learning every day. I reach out all the time to mentors, and because people can see we're passionate, they can see the work we're putting into it, and we're trying to connect with people who are our peers and as good as us, people who are starting out and can learn from us, but also people who are better than us, who can teach us. We're learning so much every day on the job, except we're getting paid to do it. And even when we're not being paid, even when there's times when we make no money, we are still on stage performing. We're still getting great promo photos of ourselves. We're testing and developing new magic. We're connecting with people who are passionate about what we like. Everybody leaves positive. And the nights that we don't make money tend to be the nights that we say okay, we made no money, so let's just enjoy ourselves. We stay out late hanging out with our friends. We end up doing more magic and enjoying ourselves, So net positive. It's always got to be net positive.
Right. Like you've said, you've made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked you, what would you be your advice for yourselves? But let's say it's just me or I have a friend and we want to produce a show. We don't have an idea of what the show is going to be yet. What would you say is the first step they should take in order to creating something?
One of the things that made it an easy decision for me to start the newest trick when I first did it was, I had seen what James Allen had done, so I knew that a similar infrastructure could work. Yeah. I also was fairly well connected within my local community, so I knew I had enough people who I could rely on to be on the shows. And I found a venue that was going to let me do it for free. So I was like, okay, there seems to be zero risk. I know it'll work. I know I have the talent to make it work, and I have a free venue. So even if it doesn't work, it doesn't cost me anything. So
you gamble a little bit.
Yeah.
The ante.
Yeah, it's poker, I guess. You start realizing you're good, then you start playing for more and more, which means you have bigger ups and bigger downs. That's life.
But I think, unlike poker, you shouldn't necessarily quit while you're ahead.
Yeah,
right?
well, and also like this is not gambling. I mean, like there's always a risk, but there's ways to mitigate that risk.
Yeah, it's a little more calculated.
Here's how I did it. I'll give you just a very simple. I sat down and I wrote out all the things that we needed. So you need a venue, you need an audience, you need performers. I found a venue that was small. When we have at the place, we still do our open mic magic show there. It's called Seascape. It's a really cool place. They just moved to a much larger location, but the venue held about 20 people and it was considered full.
Right.
So if we had 10 people show up, that was still an okay size audience for our small space. So
and also, you had a lineup of 5 performers or so.
Right.
Super easy. They all bring 2 people.
Exactly. So that was the next thing. So I picked a place that would have no cost to me. So I paid nothing. They kept all the drink money. I just didn't pay them a thing. I brought an audience. I picked a place that was small, so even if we didn't get a big audience, it would look full. I asked 5 performers to be on the lineup, and since I wanted to limit my risk, that means I didn't want to pay them. So, when you're asking performers to perform for free, there has to be something in it for them. We came up with the concept of the open mic, it's not really an open mic, but they're trying new material. And why that's advantageous to any performer is if you are a hobbyist who has never performed on stage, it's an opportunity to go up in a safe environment and try something new.
That was the first place I ever got on stage.
First place you ever went on stage, and a bunch of people have told us that was the first place they've ever tried on stage.
I did 10 years at Magic Camp, never went on stage once.
and this is not just going on stage, but going on stage for a real live audience.
Yeah.
These are
lay people.
Lay people who are coming out to see a magic show. If you were a more experienced performer, it was a chance to test an idea out on stage that you've maybe thought up but haven't had the chance to try. And if you're a pro, it was a chance to test the material on stage in front of a real audience that isn't your paying audience, right? So it couldn't harm your reputation. So we asked only 10 minutes of people. We gave them an opportunity to perform, and then I bought them a few drinks. That's fine. All the performers I was asking to be on the lineup were friends of mine. It's okay to buy your friends some free drinks. It creates a fun atmosphere. It rewards them and thanks them for being part of it. And we asked everybody, I said, look, you get to be on the show, bring 2-3 friends. And actually I think that was Jonah's suggestion. And we now, when we send out a message to everybody on our lineup, we say, please bring 2 or 3 friends. And if you have 5 performers on your lineup and they each bring 2 or 3 friends, you have an audience of 15 people. If nobody else comes to our show, our audience is filled. Yeah. So now there's no overhead cost. We don't pay our performers. We have a bunch of people advertising for us and encouraging their friends to come. There's no cost to the audience, so there's no reason for them not to come. And then we passed a hat afterwards so we could still bring in a little money, which was enough money to pay for the beers for our friends.
And to make a dent in the time to do all of those things. In the value.
Yeah, and the better the quality of your show as it develops. Like if you take the same model and do it either weekly or monthly, depending on how many magicians you have who can do it, you start by doing these shows. They're free shows, and you pass the hat. You explain to people at the end of the show, we do our little pitch. We tell them this is something, this is our dream. We can only do it because of the support of people like them. We pass the hat. And as the quality of your show increases, so does the amount of money you get in your hat. So we had times where we'd get $20. As we got better at it, there were times you might get $150. One of the things I'll say is when we first started doing, even before these shows, one of the paramount the reoccurring concepts we talk about at Toronto Magic Company is the idea that we don't want to put on a sorry show. Mm-hmm. And what a sorry show is a show that you might take your friends to, and then afterwards you feel like saying sorry to them because you're like, that was a shitty show, and I'm sorry I wasted your time and money, or even wasted your time to see this shitty show, right? If someone comes out to see your free event, they have to travel to get there. They are spending their time. They might be buying drinks. And if they're sitting there wishing they were at home, that's not good. So think about the entire experience. Before they walk in the door, if they are on the street and they can't find where the venue is, that's a problem. Yeah. So you make sure that you have posters outside to direct people. When they walk inside, does the venue space look nice? Is there someone there to greet them so that they know what's going on?
Are you still setting up chairs?
Yeah. Are people sitting down and the chairs aren't set up and the magicians are just standing in the back, drinking beer, all these things contribute to the show. So if it's a free show, pretend that they paid $20, $30, $40, $50, $100. If you get to a point that you think...
Care about it.
Yeah, if you think you're at a point where you're putting on a free show, but it's a $50 value, you will not be able to accommodate the number of people are there. So we knew with Newest Trick, it was time to expand from monthly, and then we started doing it twice a month. And we knew it was time to do it weekly because remember I said the venue only held 20 people and it was sort of full? We were getting out 40 plus.
Yeah. Right.
So we had so many people that they couldn't get into the building. And so we were like, okay, well, we could either raise the price or find a bigger space. What we did is sort of both. We created a paid show so that people who wanted to come see the better quality show could see the paid show. And now we're at a bigger location that holds more people. And we did it more regularly. So instead of 50 people coming out to one show, we would get 25 people. If you have 10 people in the audience and at the end you have like $14 in your hat, like, okay, you know what? You're either performing in the wrong space or for the wrong people, or more likely your show's not there yet, which is fine. If your show's not there yet, then they've only spent $14 to see a show. And if you've done it right and you've mitigated your possible risk, you don't lose any money. And what you now have is a night of fun with friends where you guys are learning about how to put on a good show.
And $14.
Yeah. And also,
$14,
so here's a tip that I would tell, we tell every performer who's on our lineup, film and record what you're doing so you can go home and then watch it and discuss it. You gotta watch it. If you are not watching it and you don't get to see what the experience looks like to them, you cannot possibly go home and change it. If you think you can be on stage and remember all the stuff that happened in the moment, if you think that, especially if you're beginning on stage,
you're so focused on what's the next step, what's the next line, what's the next this. There's no way you're absorbing as well as putting out, right?
No, it took honestly, it took years of being on stage before, like, for me at least personally, before I'm able to be on stage, interacting with the person on stage, doing the trick, and being conscious of like, and you know, I'm not performing in 10,000 seat theaters, but if you have like 100 or 200 people there, you know, it's hard to see how everybody, the experience that 200 people are having while you're performing. Yeah. So film it so you see what the show looks like.
Also, if you have the ability, put cameras in different places. Yeah. You know, like see what it's like from the back, see what it's like from the front. And especially because, again, early on, if you're not making money off this, what you're trying to do is gain experience. And get better as a performer, a producer, etc. So record all of your shows so that you could go home, and then also so that you can compare and see how you're developing.
And part of the beauty of this is if you're going to commit months, weeks, years to magic, document how you're going to grow and get better, because incremental changes are very hard to notice. So you don't notice yourself getting incrementally better and starting to look at the audience more and project. And, you know, maybe someone who sees you a year apart does, but video does. And if you may take a video of it and then you take a video again in a year and you compare those two, you're going to have a lot to compare and a lot to see what you're getting good at. You also, like, to be able to compare changes have to occur. Mm-hmm. So like one thing that all new performers struggle with, they're like, it's only a room of 25 people, I can project. We say to them, no, you can't. Trust us. This room doesn't have the acoustics you think it does. They go, trust me, I got it. They go up. It sucks. We can't hear them. Another big thing that no beginner or no inexperienced performer does on stage is stand in the lights, right? You're on stage, the lights are in your eyes, which means you can't see the audience. Instinctively, you think, okay, if I want to be able to see my audience so they can see me. You move out of the light. It's the opposite.
That's the one thing. I know Seascape has moved, but that was the one thing about that stage that drove me crazy was the way that it was. Yeah, I am just a little bit too tall. No matter where I stand, my face is in a shadow. I performed with. I should do a sit down trick.
I perform with what one of my friends calls. He coined it. Scotty Hamill, a mutual friend of ours. He calls it toes on the edge, where you stand like at the edge of the stage. So there's this little barrier between you and the audience. If I do that on this stage, and to truth be told, unless you've changed the lights on most stages, unless they're a really good lighting setup,
your nose casts a shadow on your mouth.
Yeah, you standing at the edge is not where they're set up to light, because most people don't stand with their toes over the edge. So you know, it's hard to stand in the light. So if you go and you watch videos, that's how we learned about these problems, right? You watch the video and you go, oh, that looks terrible. Nobody can see my face. I got to stand in the light. Oh man, I can see people in the back of the room can't hear what I'm saying on video, so they're talking now.
Yeah.
You know? Right. And I'll throw it another thing, Jonah said you can see the improvement and you see how far a trick has come. I also find sometimes that my tricks get worse, right?
Right,
and I'll over-script them, or
all the garbage that's built up over time.
Yeah, and they become like they're not tight anymore, or that
you're too lax with them. You don't care.
I don't care about them, and the audience feels it. Yeah. And I'll go back and I'll watch a video of like, you know, after I'd only been doing it for 2 months, let's say in the show, and I'm like, well, that is way better. Right. What did I do there? And now you have a video reference so you can go back and go, this is the best possible version I've ever done.
I'm going to take the good from the new and the good from the
That's
old
also
and
such
put
an
it
interesting
together.
point to document stuff in case you get worse.
That's really interesting. I never thought about it like that.
I would say, I don't want to say 100% of my shows that bomb are because of this, but I would say easily 90-something% of the shows that I don't feel go well come from like me not caring enough about that show.
Right, yeah.
It's like, and I go out, and here's the thing, you know, if you perform enough and you've worked hard enough, and you know, I think that it's not hard to get to a point where you're reliably good.
Right.
Not great, but reliably good. You go out there, you're going to be doing powerful magic that that you've honed over times doing. It's going to work, but the audience can still feel when you're good but not great.
Separation.
Yeah. So, and I find 90+% is like that time when I'm not my greatest or not at my best is when I'm just not caring. So you go back, you rewatch it, you fall in love with the piece, you change it so you can get that excitement back. It's very valuable.
So before we dive in about what the Art of Magic show is and why you think it was such a success, what was it like working together, performing an act on a show that you produced? Like there must have been a tremendous amount of stress going between the two of you and some tensions. So I just want to know a little bit what that was like.
So the biggest struggle in creating the magic that we were doing together is that it's very difficult to script 2 people's worth and not sound scripted and not sound like a middle school presentation about volcanic ash, you know, like, and this is the da-da-da-da. I feel like it's very easy to fall into that trap because it's like,
hey, Jonah.
It's your turn, it's my turn, it's your turn, it's my turn, and it feels like that. So it's very difficult, I found, to get that to feel and be as organic as possible. And it's also just new for me that I can't just be on stage and be like, well, it's okay if I forget the line that I thought was best because I'm good enough of a talker. Once there's 2 people on stage,
right, his
everything
line
needs
is
to be
dependent on your line.
Everything needs to be planned out. There's
versa.
no, you can't really. I mean, maybe someone else can improvise, but not in the way that. Not obviously. So that was the big
especially not if you're
for that.
not like a duo. Like the Evansons aren't 100% scripted. The Sentimentalists aren't 100% scripted.
But they've worked.
But they've worked side by
well
side for
together,
years.
right? And so we just started. So was there any stress about working together on an act that was in a show that we produced together? Not really. That didn't really add any stress to the whole thing for me. But was it difficult to work together? Not to produce it, but we went through multiple iterations. Like at first we were painting stuff with our hands while we chanted music and read magic quotes, and like it started really crazy, and then it ended up as a beautiful newspaper routine.
And you also sort of know each other very well as performers.
We interact
like
a
even
lot.
though we were friends and we've known each other a long time, you haven't seen me perform anywhere near as much as you've seen Jonah perform. And like you don't, if we were to perform and stuff was going off script and going a little awry, you might not necessarily know how I'm going to react or how I'm going to take the direction I'm going to take the act at that point.
We also,
right?
I will say this, we rehearsed it, right? So like that's an important thing. Like
we rehearsed it many times.
We've also gone on stage and we haven't rehearsed it. Like when we first, one of the newest tricks that we did where we first tested the initial concept, which is totally different than what we ended up doing. We came up with it and we talked about it, but we didn't actually rehearse the thing because we didn't have time because we were doing a weekly open mic magic show. So we didn't have a time to test it, and we went on stage and then we filmed it. So important. And then we watched it. And by the way,
of course,
terrible. Super easy to film. We just asked one of our friends, one of the people who comes regularly, said, "Here's our phone. Please film that set." And he did. So we thought it was like a 7-minute bit. It was 2.5 minutes. So number one, way off on timing, which was crazy. And then
I have the opposite issue where I just stay on stage for like 20 minutes. And
which is also an issue too, right? You record that and like you'll see that you're not tight in certain areas.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, I talked a lot and nobody cared.
Right, so we rehearsed it. So not only are we familiar with our performing styles, but like even if we weren't, we rehearsed it. And some of the challenges that we had came about because me and Jonah are both still developing as performers and as human beings. So we're still learning who we are. In terms of challenge, I'll say this. The biggest challenge from my end was, unlike doing your own magic trick where the only person in charge of artistic and creative decisions is you, right? You can ask your friends for help and you can get feedback, but at the end of the day, you decide what is good and what isn't. When Jonah and I are working on a trick together, I am not the final arbitrator.
Right.
We have to be, right? So I can be like, I think we should do it like this. And Jonah's like, I disagree. And we have to fight.
And that did happen.
Like we want, like I really wanted to, we ended up choosing to do a torn and restored newspaper. So we tore a newspaper and we restored it into a piece of art, and we talk about making art as kids. It was this whole piece, but I really wanted to have a custom made newspaper with like, the paper would restore as like a mismade newspaper with the image. And Jonah rightly pointed out about how we may not have had the time to get this thing and how would it conceptually look. And we had to find people. So there were pragmatic. Anyway, we go back and forth arguing about like, what's the effect? What do we want to do? And you know, you can't bully your buddy down. And so he's like, okay, a frick, we'll just do it your way, because that's not a healthy relationship. So we had to test each other's ideas. We had to go back and forth, you know, and then we talked about who would say what lines, because sometimes there's a funny joke that one person wants, or sometimes there's a difficult part where you use a lot of stuff and
or
needs
a
to be
joke
said.
that one person thinks is funny and the other one doesn't, and then we have to be like, do we do this?
Yeah.
We only have so many more rehearsals until the time where we actually have to decide to tell this joke.
Yeah,
Right,
we had
yeah.
two jokes. One that I thought was funny that Jonah didn't, which we ended up deciding not to do, but he was going to do it. But I ended up at the end. I was like, you know what? I changed my mind. It's not funny. And he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, don't do it. And we had another joke that I didn't think was funny, and last minute I wanted to cut, and then Jonah was like, let's do it, and we did it, and it got a laugh. So like, you know, the joke that we kept that I wasn't sure if we would be funny but got a laugh was Jonas talks and he says that he's a grown-up, and then I interrupt him and I'm like, just so you know, grown-ups call it being an adult. And then it's like, oh, that's amusing. And then the tag was, he looks at me and he mocks me. He's like, he's an adult, right? So then he acts like a kid during this thing, and that got a big laugh. And we wasn't sure, like, because we were talking about something
That's
a little
funny. Good for you. Good for you.
So like,
We wrote a joke.
Yeah, like that's actually really
that's
good.
The one
That's
we
actually
kept, but we wrote one. So
like, I'm not trying to throw Jonah under the bus or anything, but I know joke writing is something that you struggle with as a performer, and like that's solid. That's well written. It comes together well.
and
I like
because we wrote
But it actually came, but the whole thing actually came together. The origin of the joke came from an episode of Gilmore Girls. I brought it up in this. Then Ben was like, let's use the joke. And then he came up with the tag to sort of make sure that the joke
we
got
came up with the
punch.
tag because we filmed ourselves doing it for a live audience,
And no one
and then
laughed
we
at the joke.
we looked at the footage and nobody laughed at the joke.
Right.
So we, you know, if we didn't have that footage, we wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't remember whether that got a laugh or not. So then you have this crazy question where you go, do we keep this joke? And Jonah's answer, I wanted to cut it, and Jonah's reason to keep it is he said, it got a laugh.
Yeah,
It fits a
laughed.
thing. And that's a hard thing to argue against, because you're like, well, okay, yeah, we're telling jokes to get laughs. It fits what we're doing. It's right at that moment. It served a purpose there. I'm like, okay, let's keep it.
Right.
You know? So like, it's a combination of practice, rehearsal, testing, and then reviewing and changing. And that's what all of our shows are, you know? It's exciting.
Yeah, that is. That's really cool. I'm tremendously sorry I was not at the Art of Magic show, but from
Okay,
what
you'll be
I
at
hear,
the next one.
Yes, I will be.
To be honest, you know what? We
We were sold out.
were
wouldn't
sold
have
out.
been
We
able
were
to-
over capacity. So
Right.
we had to ask like
Many
some of
people
our
not to
friends
come, and
who,
family.
we had to tell them no. We had, a guy who had 10 more friends that wanted to come, and they were like, no.
Sorry.
So, but it's great because we have a second event that's happening, and tickets are already moving very quickly. So
I'll get
it's-
on that.
Yeah, it's nice to see that there's this, and that's a show that I'm excited about, because I really confidently feel like you are getting way more than a $20 value.
Yeah.
So like
Right.
anybody coming to our show, like everybody who walked out of the show was like, that was great. And already some of the people who have pre-bought tickets are people who are at our past show.
Awesome.
So it's like,
That's great to
yeah,
hear.
which is exciting. It means we're doing something right.
Yeah.
Something right
Lots
they
that we
wanna
still
get.
That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
What do you think you did so right in this show?
Oh.
What do you think made the Art of Magic such a hit?
Okay, so one, we had many shows before to develop and test ideas. All the things we learned we could apply. Two, after every show and before every next show, when we come up with a concept for a show, we're trying to come up with something that's more than just a magic show. We also try to come up with a way that it benefits the community and helps the community around it, and does something interesting. But also every show we say, what did we do great on that last one? What we add, and what could we do better, and that we will apply to this show. So we have like incremental steps. So for the Art of Magic first show, we were like, okay, we've had a team of people that are helping us, but they don't have a uniform. So we want to make sure this time all of our team is in our branded uniform. So we made sure we had a uniform. We had a new concept that we were testing that we were excited about. So we had that going on, which is the art gallery, art themed magic, or magic themed art. But we had our team branded. We made sure that we had a greeter and a hostess to invite people in. We made sure we had all of our pre-show music with our tech and sound guy there. We had special audio intros and stuff recorded so that the production value looked good. We had gone in early for mic checks and lighting checks. Our team was set up hours before people got there. So we did all those things. So when people walked in, number one, they're greeted by Toronto Magic Company team with our logos and stuff. They're greeted in and taken to this art gallery where they get to have delicious drinks and listen to nice music while they look at magic themed art. That's pretty cool. And then when we opened the show, there was an intro that played that let people know that they had a limited more chance to grab some drinks before the show started. We had someone there to seat them and walk them and take them to their seats. So that process was good. We're trying
Those are the type of things that we learn from.
we're trying to put on. I don't want to just put on shows. I want every show that we put on to be better than the one before it, right?
Okay.
I think that's important. I think we're growing, we're developing, and if we just do the same show we did last week, that's like, okay. But then we also went home and we reviewed the processes and we said, great, now what do we need to do for the next show? So for instance, we encouraged people to come at 7 p.m. for the gallery. And then at 7:45, we were doing seating. The problem is the gallery component didn't have enough art and wasn't big enough to really be an hour worth of being in a gallery.
Right.
So if somebody came at 7, they were just sort of sitting about. So what we're going to do for the next one is we're going to have close-up magic. So if somebody gets there at 7 o'clock, there's going to be a window from 7 till 7:30 where there's close-up magic. Then from 7:30 till about 7:50, we have a 20-minute period where they can just look at the art without magic. They can just drink. And then we seat them. So we learned from the last show that there was this issue. We can make the show better. And now think about the user experience. Last time they paid $20, they got this incredible show with multiple performers, great production value, and an art gallery. And now the next show, they get all that, plus they get a close-up magic experience before. We're bumping up that production value. We're bumping up the experience of the show.
And the price is the same. And the part that is maybe not counterintuitive, but surprising for sure, is that in the whole night, if the performance goes wrong, the evening can still go fantastically well. And that was something that Ben was very bullish about for a while, which is a hard thing to believe. As a magician, you people bring you to the event, you do, and people are like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, you're so good, you made the party. And you're like, great. What you don't realize is if you're putting on the whole event and you're putting on the whole production, all of a sudden the party that you went to, which was catered and had the, all these different stuff, you have to present those things. I'm not saying you have to cater it, but you need to make sure that the evening as a whole adds so much to the performance that if there's flaws or mistakes or whatever in the performance, as there are in anything, then overall they're still like, what a fun and fantastic evening. There was still cool magic and great art and great drinks. And it was a great experience. And that stuff plays a huge role in producing a show.
And it's also, and truth be told, there's things that we learned much earlier that, we knew that we needed better sound equipment and better production value. It's easy to say that. Just as it's easy for me to say, if you want to be a successful magician, I would suggest...
Be awesome.
I would suggest being awesome. Or if you want to be successful at marketing yourself as a performer, then you should get a website, great promo video, you should get on television.
Yeah. You should have a manager.
It's easy to say that.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that we knew we needed to do, and we knew that because every single time we did a show and didn't address that thing, we're like, well, that is still an issue. It's an issue that has not gone away. If you don't have a good mic setup and every show you do, you're like, the sound doesn't sound good. If you don't ever get a mic and speakers, it'll always sound bad.
Right.
You're never gonna wake up one day and it's like,
I was just speaking too
for
low.
some reason.
Yeah.
So we knew. And there's so many big things. We're not Penn and Teller, what they're doing, and what Copperfield are doing is the difference between playing basketball with your friends outside and being in the NBA.
Yeah.
So there's so much, and there's so many wonderful people that we work with that give us great feedback. And we're only now in July, so next month, and we're going to be doing our first ever Toronto Magic Company roundtable, which is we're going to be reaching out to several people in our community who are people whose opinion we trust, who have come out to events and participated, and say, look, this is your chance to give us feedback. What's working? What isn't? What would you guys want to do different?
Awesome.
And we're reaching out.
Is that what I'm invited to?
That's what you were invited to.
Ha! Figured it out.
I wouldn't say you figured it
Well,
out.
he told me. Let's talk about what you've done in the past and all the different types of shows that you're currently doing. So
Sure. So we started, obviously, like we just chatted about a bit, with the newest trick in the book, which is the open mic night, which went from first being weekly to then being 2 times a month to then coming back to being weekly. And it's on pause for about 2 months until we come back at the end of the summer when Seascape is, that's the venue when they're moving over.
Yeah, so we're moving to a huge, brand new venue. We're like helping with designing the stage and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Sweet.
So that's very exciting. We did that. The second show that we ever launched off of the Tales of Newest Trick was Tricks in the Six, which also started with very good feedback. And for people that don't know, the Six is a nickname for Toronto, and Tricks is what we do as magicians. And we would have 3 magicians on the lineup doing a show. And that was what that was. We ran maybe, 8 of those or 10 of those or something like that. And
that show has become what is the art of magic. So part of that is, again, after each show, we have to look at what we're doing and say, how can we address this and fix this? So and also talking about the system again. So I wanted our company to help the local Toronto magic community. And also by doing that, we're also creating a farming system at the same time. So let me explain. The newest trick in the book is a chance for someone to go on stage and do 10 minutes. It's an open mic format where people are not paying to come. So if you are a hobbyist or a beginner, it's a chance to go up on stage and, bomb a little bit without dealing with like drunk hecklers at a comedy open mic.
Or you being paid.
I've been heckled.
And
Newest trick.
And that's an opportunity for people to develop and start getting good on stage. But then I also wanted, once you start getting a little better and you've developed, we have the Tricks in the Six, which is a magic variety show. The audience paid to be there, and therefore we could pay our performers to be on the lineup. So once you developed on Newest Trick and got good, we could put you on this other show, and then we had further tiers that would be there, like our International Mystery Series or our Spotlight shows, where if you were good enough and you could do an hour plus of your own magic, and it would be a high enough quality show that we could bring people out, we could feature just you and pay you more, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea was this system that would allow you to grow and progress and doing that. But as we did this Tricks in the Six show, and as we evaluated every show and asked ourselves, how could we make it better? How could we fix the problem? We realized at a certain point that we couldn't fix the problems with the show. So for instance, one of the big ones was the name, Tricks in the Six. You'll notice Jonah had to explain what the Six was. And he did that because you don't live in Toronto. You don't know what the name means, the slang means. But the truth is that there are a lot of people who live in Toronto who also do not know what that slang means, especially people who are over the age of 35. So, and we also struggled because we realized that we were relying, just like we had with the Newest Trick, relying on performers to bring in our audience. Oh, you're going to be on the show, so you tell your friends to come. It wasn't enough. So our marketing wasn't right. We also struggled with the venue we were at, where they kept being unreliable in certain ways.
That's also, because you were trying to get higher caliber performers, if they're going to take the time to get their friends to come out to a show, they might as well charge full price for the tickets and claim 100% of it.
And we did have some objections from some people, but I will say this. 95% of the people we talked to were totally on board to do it. And even now, we're not paying a professional rate. Like we have people on our show who charge $5,000 for a show. We are paying them peanuts, and that does not a lot. But we do it because, like, I'm going to do a show that involves 16 hours of travel, and I'm getting paid $300. Why the hell am I doing that? I could get way more money staying in Toronto. I'm doing it because I'm supporting a friend's project that sounds exciting, and it's a fun adventure for me. And we have performers who like the idea and want to support what we're doing and support the community, and like the idea of being featured on a show that's a high-quality show that has a great response, and we found a hole in our market. There is not another person doing what we're doing. So if you want to be on the magic show in Toronto, you come through us. And especially when you have a company like this where we're growing and we are not dumb enough to think we could do it on our own, like the more talented people who are excited about what we're doing and want to help us make it grow, hell yeah. If you know 100 excited people who want to help us, like have them email me right now. If you're listening to this and you are a world-class web designer, and I'm not joking when I say world-class, when we did the series of Unfortunate Effects, we needed a sound editor. So we got in touch through Lee Asher with this guy. And when we were like, oh, have you done anything else before? I'm sure he giggled to himself on the other end. And then he sent us what he's worked on. And it's the Beatles, Rolling Stone, the James Bond movies. And you're like, why are you helping us with this? He's like, because it's exciting and fun. So like, if you're listening and you're like, this sounds amazing, and I am a world-class web
Anything, who
editor
cares?
or
Anything.
designer, graphic
Everyone wants
artist,
anything.
music maker, and you want to just help us write anything you want to do, we're excited. We want you to be part of it. And and if you're that person,
Who do they email? Tell them the email.
magic@bentrain.ca or
Jonah@jonahbabbins.com. Anything.
yeah, just shoot us an email. Like, honestly, and here's the
TMC
thing.
doesn't have an email?
Yeah, it does. Jonah at Toronto Magic Company, Ben at Toronto Magic Company.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can email us anywhere, but put positive energy out there. Find people who are excited to help you. Don't be afraid to take chances and put out this project. Don't worry if you start off small, because if you film, if you work hard and review what you're doing, you will grow. And as you grow and the better your shows are, the more people you're going to reach, the more people you're going to connect with, the more fun, the more exciting, and the better it's all going to be.
That's why we decided to record this episode, because there's so many people starting to do these things everywhere that I'd love for you all to have whatever tools it is that we have. And if you have any questions or anything, even if you don't have any skills to help out, anything, like, send us messages, because we want more of this stuff to exist. And I just wanted to wrap up talking about the Toronto Magic Company to mention the final show, which you mentioned very briefly, which is the International Mystery Series, which is the last show that we do where we bring in international magic talent to do a show, a private show for, usually ends up being mostly magicians, but it's a public show. So
I'm just going to say about the International Mystery Series, if you are an awesome performer and you want to be on our shows, give us a shout. And depending on who you are and what we can set up, we do stuff like I've been organizing lecture tours for the past 15 years. So we can we can organize lecture tours. So you're not just coming in to perform, you're getting to lecture to help make it worth your while a little bit more. But it's, again, a chance to share wonderful magic with not just our community, but the communities around. So reach out.
One of the things we're trying to do with the mandate of the Toronto Magic Company is to share fantastic magicians with Toronto, and to share Toronto with magicians. So that's one way that we're getting that done. And yeah, I think it was cool. And really, if anybody has questions about producing a show or bringing on talent, anything about anything that we've spoken about, send us some messages. Come say hello, because we're not that famous yet, so we still answer everything.
And we will probably never be that famous, so reach out anytime.
So we answer everything.
Yeah, our audience has been listening for about an hour. I've asked you a lot of questions, and now it's time for you to ask them a question. It can be something introspective that you want them to ask themselves, or polling the audience, something you want to know from them. What do you want to ask the Discourse Army?
For me, the thought that comes to my head is, what is the performing magic scene like in your city, and how are you a part of it? That for me is something that I'd love to hear about in all of the different cities that people listen to this.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about actually questions earlier today, and a big one I would ask is, why do you love your local magic community, and what are you doing to help make it better?
Okay. Next one, Jonah, but for Ben is the PSA. So it doesn't have to be a question. What do you think the magic community, the Discourse Army, needs to hear? Public service announcement.
On Newest Trick, which has been weekly and bi-monthly and weekly, and has 4 performers a night, every night, and this is something that James Allen pointed out to me, we have not yet had one person who did the invisible deck. And that is the biggest success of that show, which is that people are taking the opportunity to, even if they're not doing something brand new. So as a PSA, my thought is, like,
don't do the invisible deck.
Have the ability to strive to add something new, whether it's the whole trick or a line or a phrase or an idea or a moment or whatever. Strive to add something new. That's one of the biggest joys that I've gotten from this, and that would be a PSA for me.
Awesome. Love that. The next is the favorite part of the episode. So we're each going to go around and share what we think was particularly valuable, and one snippet of information that should be taken as sort of a take-home piece. For me, I loved when you were speaking about how to work together and relationships with people that you care about, and the benefits of that, and how there can be setbacks because of that, and how to fight for your ideas and when to compromise, and all that I found super valuable, because, I've struggled with people in the past. I'm more of a person to argue and then just concede. It's a good skill to work on your cooperation, I'll say. Jonah, what about you?
I would say one of the highlights of the episode and just one of the things to take home
Was sitting so close to me the entire time.
Yeah, it's been too much.
We've been touching sitting on this couch. Like it's a 3-person couch. There's only 2 of us sitting on it, and he's for some reason sitting in the middle of the 3-person couch with his knees touching my knees. I don't understand.
For some
He's
reason,
manspreading.
We're sharing a microphone.
And we have extra microphones.
There's plenty of microphones all around here. Yeah.
It's weird.
Anyways, I would say a big interesting or a big highlight. Just looking at how the show developed, because it's surreal. One of the most exciting things for me is just realizing that, these projects come from ideas in our head and then they slowly come to fruition. This Art of Magic show, like, it was an idea. I remember us starting to discuss the show and being excited and coming up with it, and then it happened. And that's how all of this, every last bit of it happened. And I think about people who are not turning their ideas into reality. So
yeah, one of my takeaways is this is the best time ever to have a passion and then find a way to monetize it and have it succeed. I mean, we have the internet to spread messages. We have all sorts of ways to advertise. There's an audience. This is a great time to do it. And I'll say that.
Get up off your ass.
Get up off your ass and do stuff. Honestly, just do stuff. And if you do stuff and you think about it and diligently, then it'll get better and you'll keep succeeding. Follow your passions. This is the time to do it. Get off your ass.
Awesome.
Rock
Love
and
it.
roll. Stay out of school.
Is it worth me asking the endless chain question? I might as well. Ben, who do you think we should have on the podcast as our next guest?
Jonah Babbins. I think
Just-
is a great
let's
guest.
end that loop.
Just Jonah. I just want Jonah interviewing himself after for some reason. Someone who would be great to have on.
Yeah.
You haven't had John Bodine yet, right?
Nope.
Nope.
I love that guy.
Cool.
He is,
Do you have his email?
I have his email. I'll
All
hook
right,
you up.
give it to us. Okay.
You'll listen at home when it's published.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you guys so much.
That's how much I love John Bodine.
You want to just
wanna
put your
listen
head
live.
near our headphones and try to pick up what we're listening to? Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. It was, I don't know how long we've been recording. Jonah knows.
16
Too long?
hours straight.
So long.
16 hours. Well, it was
So
fun.
long.
It was a
fun, and
passionate
it was
little
so cool to be
thing.
interviewed on my own podcast. That was
Yeah.
ridiculous.
When's it going to be my turn? I probably should do something magical.
Do
something. If I do something, then I'll talk about
You
it.
guys are lucky to get Jonah Babbins as a guest.
Yeah.
It's hard to reach sometimes.
Yeah, he's so wrapped up in that TMC.
Anyways, thank you
shenanigans.
guys so much, and we'll see you all.
Next Thursday.
At our next show, come to our show.
Yeah, at Toronto.
Oh yeah,
Magic
plugs.
Oh, yeah.
Plugs. The
Toronto
whole
Magic
episode was a
Company.
plug, but plugs.
Company. Toronto Magic Company, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram,
And
website.
if you're a magician listening, which I assume you are, then now you know that if you come to Toronto, you don't even have to ask, is there a show happening? Yes, there is a show happening when you are visiting Toronto. So find us on TorontoMagicCompany.com and we'll make sure that you come out and see it. And depending on when you come and how early you let us know, you might even be in the show.
And
so let us
if
know.
you write, when you send the message to Ben, if you write Discourse in Magic so he knows you came from here, then you can totally stay on his couch. So there you go. Come to Toronto. Come see a show.
Have a nice couch.
And we will see you all next Thursday.
Bye.
Peace.
Well, there you go, episode 116. I hope you learned something about putting on a show, and I hope that you find it in yourself in the next, let's say, I give you 3 months to either find a show that's happening in your city and be on it. So go to a comedy shows or see if there's magic shows or anything and see if you can be on it, or make your own. We're living in the best time ever to put on public magic shows, and I do not want you, whoever you are, to miss out. So please do that. And as always, if you like the podcast, if you like what we're doing here, do me a favor, give it a share, a like, tell the world however you can, because anytime the word spreads, it helps. Anyways, thank you so much, and we will see you all next Thursday. Peace.